Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of the Vinny Show. Oh, that's right. I had the mic way too loud there. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, why don't we try that one again? Welcome, everybody, to the most overworked 2 hours in talk radio, the most productive show in New Zealand, the most scumbaggery exposing extravaganza that you will hear with your listening eardrum places. It's the Vinny Eastwood Show, broadcasting live on AmericanFreedomRadio.com from the fabulously fluoridated capital of Auckland, New Zealand, the island change nation in the sunny slave South Pacific. It's not only fluoridated, it's also Fukushima irradiated, which according to the Prime Minister is good for the economy, because now everybody can get a part-time job as an incandescent light bulb. Now, today we will be bringing on one of the heroines of the truth movement. She's not a heroine because she gets you really high, although after you get off an interview with her, you do feel like you're withdrawing on some form of sense of peace of mind, because she exposes so much of the privacy violations and this kind of thing. She's really, really diligent. Her name's Dr. Katherine Albrecht, and we'll be coming to her in about 20 minutes of this broadcast. Before we go to that, though, I wanted to apologise to the American Freedom Radio listeners. The stream has been down. There was a big power cut and what have you. But 10 minutes before my show, it comes back up, and that's all due to the hard-working diligence of the producer, Mr. Romero, back in the little board there. Big salute to you, sir, and your good, hard, diligent work and whatnot. Over the weekend, we had a protest against the GCSB. Anybody who's familiar with the NSA? Oh wait, that's a Mexican pronunciation. It's pronounced the NSA. And what was really interesting for me about this protest? Let me see if I can get old John Key up there for you. What was really interesting about this protest is, like, not only is it kind of like 1984 New Zealand style. I mean, you people in America, you know this kind of stuff has been happening for quite some time, haven't you? Because it's just all over the place. You know, you got the NDAA and all these kind of things happening, and it just seems like, I don't know. How can you really tolerate your government saying that all the citizens are basically terrorists, therefore they all need to be surveilled on? And what really sickens me is when these... I'm just going to go ahead and call them scum, because that's exactly what they were in the media and in the House. Here's this one line that they always, and I mean always, for the past 100 years or something, every time they want to take away your rights and liberties to privacy, they say this: well, if you're doing nothing wrong, you got nothing to hide. Now, I don't know about you, but that smells like BS to me. Smells like a big steaming frickin' pile of it. You know why? You know why it smells like a big steaming pile of BS? Because it is! Some things are exactly as they appear. Here's the deal, okay? Professor Jane Kelsey, who's at the Auckland University, okay? She's, lecturer and law professor, so on and so forth. She's involved with a number of different activist projects, against New World Order type privatisation, and against the New World Order controlled Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which is essentially just like the European Economic Community some time ago, which trades around, free trade, right? What they do is they call it free trade, and then they turn your country into a slave. That's basically what's going on here. And my perspective on this is very, very clear indeed. It's a big hoax, so that they'll tempt you in with the possibility of your economy growing as a result of these trade deals. But what in actual fact is the agenda is to destroy your national sovereignty. Not to diminish it, not to change it a little bit, but destroy it entirely. Now, she's been involved with a number of action groups, And she got surveilled, doing completely legal things, like researching into what the TPPA actually is. Alright? So if you think that you're not going to be surveilled just because you're staying within the law, think again. You will be surveilled if you disagree with the government at any point about anything which they think is important. So, if they want to take away your rights and you don't like that, you're going to start to get surveilled. If they want to destroy your economy and you don't like that, you're going to start getting surveilled. If you start up a business venture which threatens a multinational monopoly that has connections to the Prime Minister, you're going to get surveilled and raided. Okay? That is how this works. Get it through your freaking heads! They're trying to enslave us! All of us. There is no ifs. There are no buts. Well, there's actually quite a few buts. They're all in Parliament. And there are no maybes. That is what's going on here. Anybody who does not realise that needs adult supervision. Alright? I'm serious about this. If you believe that giving the government draconian power to surveil anybody it wants that threatens whatever agenda it's got, you need to go to a child care centre and tell them that you need supervision because you're that freaking stupid that even the things that are obvious in life don't mean a freaking thing to you. Okay, that's my assessment of the situation. And I used to look after autistic boys. Trust me, even they'd be against this bill. Why, under any circumstances, would you want that to happen? Okay, unless you're too stupid to think. Now, a number of journalists know that this is the case, but guess what? They ain't going to report on the damaging details. I've watched a number of videos on this. And dig this. This is the funny thing. TV3, in their infinite wisdom, the corporate TV3, which the current communications minister for the national government in New Zealand used to be the CEO of, explain that one to me, leads with a story. And you'll love this. Nationwide protests against the GCS bill, the GCSB bill. And what was the first statement that they made? Okay, first statement they made is, protesters clash with police. And what's the second statement they made? Rocks and bottles were thrown at police in Palmerston North. Okay, now, doing a little bit of investigative journalism on my part, I think it might be the first time I've ever done it, I had a talk with the leader of the Palmy Panthers down in Palmerston North on the night of the story itself. I think maybe about less than an hour after the story aired. I interviewed him for about 15 minutes. And there were no bottles, there were no rocks, there were no clashes with police. I spoke to at least 4 other leaders of protests around the country, and I consider myself one of the leaders of the protests in Auckland, even though I wasn't even allowed to speak, because I would talk about the New World Order and stuff like that, and they didn't want everybody to be tarred with the brush of being a conspiracy theorist who talks about frickin' reality for some reason. That's frustrating. But there were no clashes with police. Anywhere. Anywhere. So the very first 2 statements of how the news covers the protest were complete and utter lies and fabrication. They're working for the government. That's my conclusion based on the evidence. Their former CEO is currently working for the government. That means they're working for the government. There's a number of other things that they've done along those lines, like giving the Prime Minister, quote unquote, the Prime Minister's Hour on Radio Live, which is a MediaWorks owned subsidiary. In the height, you guessed it, of election season. So, he's only on there. He's like, I can't talk about politics because that's just not, because it's election season. Right. You're the Prime Minister talking on radio for an hour uninterrupted. And supposedly that's not going to be good for political expediency. My frickin' ass. You've got to be kidding me. These people are liars, okay, all the time. And the videos that I've posted about this protest, there's no editorializing, there's no summation by me, there is simply the speakers speaking in full, not edited. And when I say not edited, I mean I haven't cut anything out or added anything in. Or chopped and changed things round to make them appear as I want them to appear. Had 2 camera angles, so I had my GoPro on my shoulder and had a lovely assistant filming from the other side using my other camera and cutting back and forth. So the videos are very watchable, they appear very professional. And you actually get all the information that they're talking about, not just a few minutes here or there cut together like they do. All right. Now, that aside, I've actually broken into the mainstream media this time during these protests. The John Key 1984 poster, which those on the video will be able to see behind me, made it into TV3 News. So that was good. That very story that I was talking to you about, where they were completely full of BS. Yep. They managed to squeeze my this little banner in here, and that's made by my man Roy, who was incredibly diligent and did a lot of posters for these protests. And what I find really strange is that, although the fact that these posters made it into the news, there's just no explanation or anything like that. Like they're there for a second or two, maybe. Because it's just... I've come to the conclusion that the mainstream media are completely bought and sold for. Alright, they're bought and sold. That's it. End of frickin' story. They're working for the New World Order. Doesn't matter how nice a coverage you think they're going to give any particular issue. What I really get frustrated with is activists actually going to the mainstream media trying to get their stories released. They're not going to release it. Is it the truth? Yes. Is it really important for the country? Yes. Are we going to report on it? No. Of course not. If you're an activist and you want to get your story out, come to me. Okay? Please. Please come to me. I will get your story out. I will bring you on the live radio show. I will, if necessary, sit you down in front of a camera so you can read a 56-page dossier and stay up for 3 frickin' nights editing it so that your story can at least be made public and on radio. And on YouTube. Even if, millions of people don't watch it, which they fricking well should, at least it's out there. And I play my part in ensuring that those people who sacrifice so much in their lives for my freedom, for the freedom of my country, actually have at least somebody listening, as opposed to going to the mainstream media where you either get A, nobody listening at all, or B, even if they do cover whatever story you're bringing them, they'll demonize the living frack out of you and undermine everything that you're saying with their BS. It's what they frickin' do. Now, I won't do that. You know why? Because I'm not a scumbag. If you trust the media, you also need adult supervision. There are many daycare centres that will take you, I'm sure. March on down there. Excuse me, I trust the mainstream media. It's like, oh, you poor dear. Come on in here. We'll give you a glass of milk and a Monsanto cookie. There you go, son. Oh. I mean, come on. Have IQs dropped sharply at some point throughout history? And the answer is actually yes. You know why? Because of public education, so that only the government propaganda will be taught to you. Like, for example, you can trust the government. You'd have to be pretty insane to believe that. You can trust police. You can trust judges. You can trust the media. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Oh, yeah, you can trust doctors. Oh, my God. Your teachers know what they're talking about. Universities aren't funded by Colgate and biased towards fluoride. There's so many stupid things you can believe, isn't it? And, what's really sad is that when you know that these things are a lie, everybody thinks that you're crazy for knowing the truth. Okay. Oh, you're killing me. No, really. Really. You're killing me. We'll be right back after the break at the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. Don't you go anywhere. I suppose you really can't escape because you're under surveillance. We'll be right back.
No matter where you live, globalism affects you. Did you know that the Vinny Eastwood Show has more subscribers than New Zealand Herald TV and is New Zealand's most popular YouTube news channel, where warm-hearted humour and a list of awesome guests talk about crucial issues which the mainstream media ignore? A show where you, the listener, can phone up with questions, comments and suggestions of guests. Vinny is building a hub to connect truthers with raw information they need to become active. He can help you gain further skills such as website building, producing audio and video, and creating revenue streams in your own multimedia environment. Because Vinny supports such a wide range of people in the truth movement, he is not government or corporate backed and relies entirely on your donations. Give now, give generously, or subscribe for $10 a month for access to ad-free video archives. Just visit the VinnyEastwoodShow.com and click donate.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, broadcasting live on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Please, by the way, my bank accounts are dry. All right? Dry. Like salami. And I've got my internet bill that just came in. That's $120. And rent that is due, that's $250. And we don't have money for food either, so that'd be like another $150 or something. So we need pretty much immediately like around about $500. So if you could please go to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com right now, like today, and chuck us a as big a donation as you can afford. And what I really need, more than just those one-off donations, is the recurring subscriptions. Okay, those are really, really valuable. It took me like 3 years. It took me about 3 years to get myself up to enough recurring payments where I didn't have to beg for money every other day. And unfortunately, PayPal cancelled that out, saying that I need to prove that I was a charity or something like that. I didn't know what I was doing when I set that stuff up, which was a real pain. And they locked away, I think there's about maybe $600 in that account, which they say that I won't be able to get back unless I prove that I'm a charity, which I'm not, and I already told them that. So they've stolen that money, and they're just sitting on it, accumulating the interest. You know, thank you, PayPal, you frickin' scumbags. But in either case, I created a business PayPal, which won't have that problem. So please, by all means, go to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com and subscribe. Clicking the little PayPal button, you can subscribe from anywhere from $1 to $100 a month. Doesn't matter. We'll give you commercial-free archives. And the commercial-free archives aren't that hard to find if you want them for free and want to trial them before you start giving something to the show. Okay, please help me. I need desperately your support right now, because people like the Prime Sinister John Key, who's on the screen behind me for those of you watching the video, is taking this country's freedoms out. Okay, really, just taking them out. Step by step with the totalitarian tiptoe, as David Icke would say it. And there ain't no other media source in this country who is operating to this extent, to this level. And I'm not tooting my own horn here. Technically I am, but it's true. Okay? When Muhammad Ali said, I'm the best boxer in the world, and I'll whip his ass, and that kind of thing, and I'll dance around, he won't land a blow on me. It wasn't because he was a narcissistic dude who was completely full of himself. It was because he was the best guy in the world, and he danced around and barely got a hand laid on him. Okay? I'm the Muhammad Ali of the New Zealand truth media. Okay? Please, bet on me. It's a safe bet. This is the rumble in the jungle. The thunder from down under, yo. I've got my mitts on and I will be dealing the killer blows to the scumbaggery agents of the New World Order that are currently controlling this country. And I need, underline that, I desperately need your support in order to continue this fight. The one thing that really frightens me is that the activists who I have on this program and the people who, particularly from New Zealand, that we have on the show, basically don't get a platform really anywhere else. And even if they do, like I say, it's reduced to a minute or two, tops. That's if they don't just get reduced to a sound bite. You know, how are you gonna satisfy your hunger for the truth with only a soundbite here or there? Okay, we'll give you the whole truth sandwich to fill your belly up and digest that, Shiite Muslim. This is the absolute best, in my opinion, and it might be a biased opinion, of course, alternative truth source in the country. Certainly the most popular. And it's not because I'm, so great and what have you. It's just because I show up and I do what's necessary. Okay, like I was pretty upset when I went to the GCSB protest and they didn't even give me a chance to speak to the crowd until the very end when there was like a couple of dozen people left. When I lent my megaphone and taped the microphones up front for them because their sound system was so poor that the thousands of people that showed up, those at the back of the crowd, couldn't hear anybody speaking. And they actually tried to prevent me from helping them. And were really irritated that I was up on stage with them, putting microphones on the speakers so that they could be captured in high quality sound. And filming them from two angles so that I can get those things. Okay? I may not be appreciated by some people, but at the end of the day, I'm not doing it there. I'm not doing that kind of thing to get myself in the headlines or anything like that. I'm doing it so that these really important people who have suffered so much, exposing the drastically massive levels of scumbaggery in this country, I'm doing it for them. They might not even know who I am. They might not even care. But that's okay. All right? Somebody's got to help them get their message out. Mainstream media ain't going to do it. All of the other people in the crowd with their cameras and everything, they ain't going to do it. They barely upload any videos at all. And when they do, it ain't edited, it ain't done well, and it ain't put on a channel really of any significant following. So the responsibility falls to me, not because anybody's asked me to do it, but because I am compelled to do it, because my country needs me to do it. That people need their voices to be heard. And when you're the person in that position to give them that voice, if you do not take responsibility for that position, regardless of whether or not you're appreciated for doing it, it's a spit in the face of everything that you claim to stand for. And there's many people in this country that are like that, who have this ability and don't use it. I will never be one of those people. That's why I need you to go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com and subscribe for a couple of dollars a month, $5 a month, either through the bank account, the KiwiBank bank account, and then if you can't do that, then there's a PayPal option available. Now, we'd like to get up our guest now, Katherine Albrecht. So if you've got her on the on the line there, AFR, just let me know. Or if Katherine, you're on the line there, just speak up.
I think I'm right here. Hello. Good evening.
Yeah. I'm so glad to have you with me because, there's been a lot of scumbaggery going down in New Zealand to do with surveillance and what have you recently. And coincidentally, here's somebody who has, like, the goss on what surveillance and this kind of thing is. So, Dr. Katherine Albrecht, it's my honour to have you on the show today.
Well, thanks. It's really delightful to be back on your show. And, for 14 years now, I've been talking about the whole privacy issue. I have to say, it's been, you never want to say I told you so about bad things. You kind of hope that you're wrong. But a lot of the things that we've been warning people about for all these years, I think really thanks to the efforts of Edward Snowden and a really diligent media that's really, turned over the rocks and been showing us what's going on, we're actually starting to see some awareness now for the first time in a long time.
What frustrated me about the Snowden story is the people that you would expect to be appreciating this kind of information, these kind of whistleblowers coming out saying, "Oh, he's just a distraction. Oh, it's just BS. If he was real, the media wouldn't cover him at all." It's like, no, the media can't cover up absolutely everything.
Yeah, and my experience actually with the media is that there are people within the media that have done tremendous work to expose things. I mean, you look at Watergate. I mean, that's one of the biggest explosive stories that's ever taken place. You look at Wienergate. That's happening right now, right here in the U.S. in New York. There are many things that journalists have helped to uncover and to expose. So I'm not a big fan of the mainstream media, I think, in a lot of the chronic problems that face the country. But when it comes to the acute problems like this one, I really think that we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the media. I'll give you one example. Back in 2007, I actually worked with the Associated Press with reporter Todd Lewin for over 6 months on a story that broke and took down the implantable microchip industry. This is the Verichip Corporation that was implanting microchips into the arms of diabetic patients and Alzheimer's patients, and we were able to put an end to it because we worked together, kind of a whistleblower journalist relationship. And after 6 months of doing all of the due diligence and all the research, that major story broke, and it truly just decimated the corporation that was doing it. Their stock value went from $11 a share to like 24 cents a share, and they were delisted from the stock exchange. So there are times when the media really continues to be just an immense force for good, and I think it's one of the reasons why our privacy is so important. One of the first people to get surveilled and spied on and have pressure put on them are the members of the media. And so I think they're particularly sensitive to this because they rely on that kind of confidentiality and privacy and indeed secrecy of their communications with their sources in order to be trusted enough with these kinds of stories to bring them to light. So I definitely think journalists, they're the first people to need private services, privacy services, and to need to be thoughtful about that.
The Prime Minister's Office of New Zealand recently called a journalist asking them to reveal their sources because they wrote an article exposing some basically crimes that the Prime Minister's office was committing, and tried to bully them into giving up their sources. And like a good chef, the journalist did not reveal their sources. And and the New Zealand military has just come out and published a public statement saying that journalists are in fact a threat to national security in New Zealand.
Of course they're going to say that. Oh. Yeah, absolutely they're going to say that. And yet, I think it was Alex Jones just today up on his website was talking about this new report where they actually cited the Drudge Report, too. I mean, talk about all the icons of modern journalism, and really saying that there's a real, that this bad news is popping up on the headlines of this alternative media, and the government of the United States is now saying, we've got to get there first. We're no longer are we able to cover up these kinds of stories. And we've got to get with the reality that we can't cover them up anymore. They are going to be exposed. And so our new tactic has to be, getting there first and putting our spin on the bad news before the public gets a hold of it. And I thought that was very interesting that they're acknowledging that in this informational arms race that they are losing. They're not able to shut down the entire internet. The internet is almost like it's like water. You put your hand and you block off one course of it, and then it just flows around you and goes a different way. It's virtually impossible to stop the free flow of information today. And let me give you one example that I think is just so encouraging of this. I'm thinking even a couple of years back. Do you remember when the Iranian elections happened and there was some shenanigans at the ballot box, or at least the public certainly believed that there was, and there seemed to be evidence of that. And the people of Iran, a very oppressive regime, a very oppressed nation, they took to the streets and protested what was happening in that election, the outcome of the election. Well, the police went and cordoned off the area where this protest was occurring, and they told all the journalists that they had to leave. And so anybody with a camera, anybody with a microphone, anybody with a press badge, they were all forced to leave. Well, meanwhile, the police actually shot and killed a woman who was lying in a pool of blood on the ground. And that information would have never reached the mainstream 20, 30 years ago, ever. But because everybody in that crowd had a smartphone, they all had iPhones and Android phones and Motorola phones, they all snapped pictures and posted them up on Twitter. Within seconds, the entire world was able to see what was happening in Iran. And that's the kind of thing that unless you're going to act like North Korea and take away every last shred of technology and make it a capital offense to own a cell phone, which is what does happen in North Korea, unless you're willing to go to that level of oppression, you can't stop it. And I think that you look at Edward Snowden, you've got the entire FBI, you've got the U.S. government shaking their massive fist in his direction, but there's not a thing they can do about him. The cat's out of the bag, it's done. When you mention your story in New Zealand, though, what I think is so disturbing about this is that the people who are accused of these crimes, and when the whistleblowers reveal the crimes and actually show the criminals red-handed, that there's this willingness on the part of the media or the public to let them reframe the conversation and blame the messenger and turn the whistleblower into the supposed criminal, and thus deflecting the attention away from their own crimes. And I think that's the big thing we're up against right now in the court of public opinion. People have got to stand by the whistleblowers and support them. Edward Snowden is a hero. He is not a traitor. And if you want to talk criminals, it's the people he exposed.
Indeed. And we'll be right back soon, ladies and gentlemen. Just remember, the person who kind of coined the phrase conspiracy theorist was Richard Milhouse Nixon, who called Woodward and Bernstein conspiracy theorists because they exposed him for being part of a conspiracy. We'll be right back after the break at thevinnieeastwoodshow.com. Don't you go anywhere, folks. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the show where there is nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. And my very special guest, the woman who has exposed the very scary, very chip, Dr. Katherine Albrecht. Now, what's your website again there, Dr. Katherine?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What's your website there again?
Oh, I've got a bunch of them. My daily radio show website is kmashow.com. You can also just find my name, KatherineAlbrecht.com, but that Albrecht has a CHT at the end, which is a little tricky, so kmashow.com. We'll get you right there. If you want to look at the information that we found in the implantable microchips, you can find that at antichips.com. And that's got the full report about these implantable microchips causing cancer. You can also see the protests that we did outside of the Alzheimer's Center down in Florida, where they were chipping 200 Alzheimer's patients. We got that stopped, as I mentioned, with the help of the mainstream media, the Associated Press. So that's all at antichips.com. And then I know in New Zealand, you guys have some horrible laws on the books about the chipping of dogs, requiring people to microchip their animals in many parts of New Zealand. I know at one point they were even talking about causing the entire nation of New Zealand to have to microchip all dogs in the country. And if you'd like to find out why that's an absolutely terrible idea, the basic facts, when you implant these microchips into animals, they develop fast-growing malignant tumors around the microchips, anywhere between 1 and 10% of the time. And we know of dozens of dogs that have died from these tumors around their microchips, dogs that have bled to death from the chipping procedure. It's truly inhumane. It's absolutely awful. And you can find all of that research if you go to chipmenut.com. So we've been fighting the implantable microchips and the use of tracking microchips in products for many, many years now. I've been at this since 1999. And lest people become discouraged, I always try to focus on those victories. We got them to stop. No place, am I aware, anywhere on planet Earth right now is anyone promoting the microchipping of human beings with implantable microchips. And, that's really the result, once again, of a whistleblower working with mainstream media, Edward Snowden style, to really bring these things out into public view. And at that point, they can't stand the light of day.
Do you believe that
that's all the good news.
Do you believe that the mainstream media brings things out usually just when they're forced to, because the alternative media covers it so much and leaves them in the dust?
I don't think so. Let me tell you what I actually think about the mainstream media. I believe that there are, within any profession, there's kind of a code of professional ethics. And there's sort of what they present to the public is what they want to be believed to be. And then there's what they present to one another is what they want to try to seem within their own professional circles. And then there's what they really are. And I think, for example, you can use politicians. And let me contrast politicians and journalists because I think it's an interesting contrast. So if you look at politicians, on the surface, they try to seem to the public as though they are the defenders of justice and freedom and they're our representatives and they're going to help us to live better and improve
I'm holding
society.
back the laughter here. But continue.
Exactly. So that's how they present themselves to us. But to one another, I don't think they even bother to try to uphold that facade. And this is why you get, people like Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein defending the actions of the NSA and really kind of playing that same old game of, we're part of the political system.
Apparently around Washington, if somebody says something that sounds like complete nonsense, they say, oh, that's a lot of Pelosi.
Yeah, that's a great phrase. I like it. So yes, definitely. But I think among themselves, there's a, hey, let's get away with this and that. We've seen evidence of little bits of that, even things captured on camera and scandals that break, et cetera. Within journalism, it's a little bit different, though, because within journalism, they portray to us this image that they're bringing us all the news, the real news, the unbiased news. But amongst themselves, there also is kind of a high standard that they do try to adhere to. And if they're not adhering to it, they try to hide it from one another. And I've noticed this is actually a pretty powerful cultural thing. I don't know if it comes from the schooling that they receive or if it's, culture is a powerful thing within any profession. And within the culture of journalism, they view themselves and they want each other and us to view them as impartial breakers of real news, muckrakers. This goes all the way back to the early part of the 1900s. When journalism really was, that's what they did. They broke up Tammany Hall. These are all American references, but, they broke up corruption rings and they exposed scandals. And I think even to this day, if you're going to be a famous journalist, you mentioned Woodward and Bernstein. If you're going to be, at the top of your journalistic game, it's because you're an investigative journalist who blew the lid off of something big, something scandalous. And, I think even now that within that culture, that's what they all aspire to be and to do. And the only thing that really stops them from doing that is either they're not very good at their job or they're lazy, or more likely, the people at the very top of the journalistic organization are pulling the puppet strings. And that's when you get into the Bilderberger conferences, the Council on Foreign Relations. You can see where the power structures flow, where those folks want to control all of the media at the high levels and pull the puppet strings. But I don't believe that they control the individual journalists. And I think we still continue to see, probably the best way to think of it, the elite control the chronic journalism, And I do believe that journalistic ethics still control the acute journalism. You can kind of liken that to sort of like the patient has a disease. If it's diabetes or, chronic overweight, then that's the creeping control of the people at the top pulling the puppet strings. You're going to see that seeping into every piece of news coverage and into the background of every single thing they write and do. But when it comes to an acute issue where there's a breaking news story right this moment, implantable microchips cause cancer, the NSA is violating the Fourth Amendment and secretly spying on people's phone calls, then at that point, I still do trust the journalistic community to jump into action.
And there's also another part of the culture is that discipline by your editors. There was a great story here in New Zealand exposing the wonderful uses of intravenous vitamin C on a man named Alan Smith, who was basically dead, and they brought him back to life using this vitamin C. And the medical profession tried to cover it up or whatever, but there's a journalist here for the New Zealand branch of 60 Minutes called Melanie Reid, and to her credit, she really, really did an amazing story and just kind of like blew it right open. And she told me privately that she got hounded and was threatened by her editors and producers for doing that. I'm
not surprised.
Yeah.
There are journalists who've been fired, who've been, you'll never work in this town again. It does happen. And I think it's when from the highest level that someone at the top says, yea, verily, we will never do a story on, fill in the blank. And if at that point they try to buck the system, then I think you can get in trouble. I don't think there ever was at The Guardian at the highest level somebody saying, yea, verily, you will never do a story on the NSA. If there had been, then I think Glenn Greenwald probably would not have been able to do the story, and he would have had to go elsewhere to make it happen. So, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right that there are taboo topics. It's funny, on my own radio show today, I was just talking within academia, which is my background. I've got a doctorate in human development and psychology from Harvard University. And coming through that academic environment, there are certain things we're not allowed culturally within that culture to talk about. Great example being religious faith. You mentioned, you're allowed to go to church on Sunday as long as you keep it to yourself. But the moment that you try to say anything about your actual belief system, which forms a huge part of the psychology of what a person even is, then at that point you're blackballed. So once again, there are very powerful structures in place to keep people from talking about certain things. I'll give one more example within the judiciary here in the U.S. There is this one of the stories I want to talk about during the show today is Andrea Hernandez, the 15-year-old honor student in San Antonio, Texas, who bucked the system and refused to wear their tracking microchip around her neck that they issued last year. And it's interesting because the judge who ruled on her case actually had formerly worked for the school district and had a massive conflict of interest. He's a federal judge. And they brought this to the attention of their attorneys. They brought it to the attention of other attorneys, and nobody would touch it with a 10-foot pole. And finally, I asked a good liberty-loving, freedom-loving attorney friend of mine who's done a lot of great work, and I said, why won't they bring this up? This judge should have recused himself, and, they should appeal because he's totally, totally in bed with the school district. And she said, Katherine, there's not an attorney anywhere in the United States who will go up against a federal court judge. And I said, why not? The evidence is right there. She said, yeah, but they will blackball you and you will lose your license. You cannot fight them.
I have a supporting example.
Like that, where there's a power structure going on that you can't buck. And every profession has one.
Yeah, and it comes down to the point that, look, if you're used to driving around in a European car, living in a upmarket apartment, having enough expendable income so that you can drink top shelf liquor every night and purchase any drug you really want, and then somebody tells you, please cover this story because it's really important to the country, and then you know that you will lose all of that if you do.
Absolutely. Money. Yes.
All right. Now, journalists, this is a question to you. I know that most of you don't listen to the show because, basically you've got other agendas to follow. But at the end of the day, make a decision. What is more important to you? Money or your freedom? make a decision, okay? And make a decision with some conviction. Because if you don't actually have any courage to follow your convictions through to their logical conclusion, then you are about as valuable as that fiat currency that you love so much. That is not a value that I am familiar with. I mean, my last paycheck was like nearly 15 grand. And then here I am on the bones of my behind doing the right thing. Just because it's the right thing. We'll be right back after the break with Dr. Katherine Albrecht, ladies and gentlemen. Back in a minute.
If you take an active interest in maintaining the optimum health and well-being of yourself and your family, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is the magazine you've been waiting for. Having taken Australia and New Zealand by storm, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is now available in the UK and Europe. Visit www.nznaturalmed.co.uk or call 01626 337 531 to order your copy now.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the fastest 2 hours in talk radio. It's the Vinny Eastwood Show. It's the lighter side of genocide, because in a world so full of chaos and madness and persecution, if you lose your sense of humour, you'll go friggin' nuts. And my very special guest is Dr. Katherine Albrecht. Her websites, are kmashow.com, startpage.com, which I think was one you didn't mention, which I recall is a way to basically Google things without Google and the NSA keeping all your frickin' information. It's a very important web search page to use. Antichips.com and chipmenot.com, and I believe she's also got a contract for a new advertising campaign with Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. Those kind of chips. I joke.
Oh, you're too funny. No, I haven't done the Pringles thing yet. Actually, Pringles, I believe, is owned by Procter & Gamble, which is one of the companies that we've been boycotting for many, many years because of their involvement with RFID, radio frequency identification microchips. So not a big fan of any Procter & Gamble products around here. But the other website I do want to make people aware of is startmail.com. And, after doing this for 14 years, the big problem that I faced, Vinny, is that people would always say, well, that's all fine and well that there's all these privacy invasions, but now that you've got me super depressed, what in the heck am I supposed to do about it? And for many, many years, I didn't have a solution other than boycott the companies. But, eventually you got to boycott everybody. So what we finally did is I joined up with a little company out of the Netherlands, a Dutch company called IXQuick, or IXQuick. And they had a tiny little search engine that was serving totally private search results. Now, this was after I discovered that Google and, I can also say Yahoo and Bing do not exist in order to be search engines and provide you with free answers to all your questions. What they really are is market research companies that have hit on a brilliant way to get the public to reveal personal information about themselves and never be the wiser. So, and I should back up and explain that. The reason that Google has that nice little blinking cursor in a little empty window is not because they want to, answer all your questions. They're not your mom. They don't owe you anything. And in case you hadn't noticed, you don't have to pay them anything for this extraordinary amount of information at your fingertips. Why is that? Well, the answer to that, actually, if I go back to the 1980s when I got my undergraduate degree in international marketing, one of the things that my marketing professors told me back then, this was before the internet, was market research is the hardest challenge we ever face. It's very hard to get people to give you honest answers about the personal details of their lives. So if you want to know if they have, marital problems or financial problems, they're never going to tell you that. So what Google has hit on, and Yahoo and Bing, Microsoft, is a way to provide you with a service so that you will believe that you are being immensely helped by them. In the meantime, the real purpose of having that window there for all those searches to go into is to provide basically a way to look inside of every person on the globe's head 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 times a day and know everything about you.
And this
So
is called
they do it for marketing purposes.
this is metadata as well, isn't it? And even there's a provision in this new GCSB bill in New Zealand. They're basically our version of the NSA. In fact, incidentally, you'll love this, Catherine. The NSA has offices in the New Zealand GCSB building.
Oh, really?
No Shiite Muslim.
Oh my goodness! All right. Well, that's just disturbing. Not surprising, but truly just cringeworthy.
And of course, the mainstream media leaves that part out because that was exposed during the public meetings and during the protest, and that's one of the details that they chose not to cover.
I bet they chose not to cover that. No kidding. All right. Well, yeah, the NSA, and here's where this really comes, I think, full circle, is you've got these private corporations that, at least in the U.S., they're not covered by the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. There is no law in the U.S. or in the Constitution that says Google can't provide a little window that's really just a honey trap for all of your personal information. If you choose to provide it, that's your fault, and you pay the price. There is no protection legally against that because it's a voluntary transaction that you're doing with them. Where this becomes really interesting is that because we have no Fourth Amendment protections against these companies capturing all of our data, we provide them with huge amounts of data, and then it is just a matter of time before the government agencies that aren't allowed to capture this data on their own say, woo, Google has the largest database of personal information about people ever collected in the history of humanity. We want a piece of that. And so they build the back door in. And this is why these 9 PRISM companies that were exposed by Edward Snowden, it's not a surprise that they chose those 9 companies. I mean, look at who they are. They're Google, they're Facebook, they're Microsoft and Bing and Outlook. They are AOL, from back in our parents' era. They are Apple. Everybody's walking around with their iPhone. Of course they want access to that information. It's a goldmine for them. And what it does is it means that they don't have to build a surveillance infrastructure themselves. They can simply piggyback onto one that's already been built by these private corporations. So to get back to my story, I, back in 2009, joined forces with this little tiny search engine called XQuick. And we created, I said, well, it's lovely that you have XQuick, and it's great that it's private and we can search, but people want Google results. They like the Google search engine. If there's one thing Google does well with all of its money, it's hired some of the brightest minds out there, and they have a darn good search engine. They're good at what they do. So people want Google results. So what we did was we built the startpage.com search engine, and Startpage searches Google for you while providing a buffer between you and Google. So if you want to look up something...
Whoa. So let me see if I get this straight. Let me get this straight. So the NSA piggybacks off of Google to steal everybody's information, and what you do is you piggyback over Google to keep everybody's information secure.
That's pretty much right. That's a great way of putting it.
Well, bam!
When you go to Startpage, let's say you want to search for something, personal or private, bankruptcy, foreclosure, sexual problems, whatever. We don't care. You go to Startpage and you punch in your search. We submit it to Google for you privately. Google never sees you. They only see us. And we get the Google answers. We then strip out all the tracking cookies and we serve them to you privately. And then as soon as you've seen the results, we delete all records of your visits. So we don't store your IP address. We don't make any record of what you searched for. We have no idea who's been on our website at the end of the day. And we are now serving 4.5 million searches every single day at startpage.com and xquick.com. And the difference, by the way, between the two, Startpage is only Google results. So when you search on Startpage, you'll know what Google has to say about your topic. And XQuick, IXQUICK, XQuick gives you results from other search engines, but not Google. They're both equally private. They're both third-party certified. And I think the most important thing, neither one of them is based under U.S. jurisdiction. So because we are a Dutch company based outside of U.S. jurisdiction, Patriot Act requests, PRISM requests, FBI requests, FISA court orders, none of that is directly applicable at all to Startpage or XQuick. So you don't have that extra layer of fear that the U.S. government could be putting the screws to our company, because even if they did, we would say fly a kite. You don't have any control over us. We're Dutch. And, normally I'm a pretty true blue American gal. I've got a pretty international outlook, but, I do try to buy American, and I encourage New Zealanders to buy New Zealand and, Frenchmen to buy French.
Here's an interesting part of this story then. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which New Zealand's signing up to, it becomes, we have these campaigns in New Zealand called Buy New Zealand Made. So the government will fund these TV shows and, buy New Zealand Made, encouraging people to buy New Zealand products. Under the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, that kind of activity will be illegal because it interferes with the international conglomerates that are going to be doing business with New Zealand, and they will actually be able to sue the country in the World Court, which they always win at because they're corporations and they own the World Court.
Heaven help us. See, that's the kind of thing that goes so against the purpose for which we have government. And I know you get this better than anybody, Vinny. But, as you were saying in your intro, we have government because they're supposed to be our servants. They serve us. They're like the maid and the gardener. They are not supposed to be coming up with these rules that say if we, try to restrict our purchasing to our own country, that somehow we're violating laws. That's craziness.
Well, the world is insane. I completely believe, and anything that comes out of officialdom, anything that they say, you can basically be assured that it's the direct opposite. Government says we're here to protect your freedoms. Okay, they're here to destroy them. Health system says we're here to keep people healthy. They're there to make sure that people stay sick. The media's there to inform people. They're there to misinform people. So on and so forth. Every single government agency or massive corporation essentially has that exact same. Well, if anything, it seems like satanic inversion to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it, and I think it all starts with the initial inversion, which is that we are the sovereigns and they are the servants, and they flip that over, and the minute they flip that over, everything winds up upside down. I liken our state as free people all over the world against these oppressive governments that claim to be our freely elected public officials. It's almost like we have a mansion, and we're the owners, and we hire the maid and the gardener, and then they handcuff us and throw us down in the basement. And then they wait for our paycheck to come in, and they raid the mailbox, and they're living high on the hog off of our money, meanwhile telling us, keep quiet, we won't hurt you. And that's just not how it's supposed to be. We are supposed to be in charge of them, not them holding us captive in cowering in fear that our very servants who we hire to do our bidding have now taken over and are intimidating, threatening, jailing, and even killing us. This is not how it's supposed to be.
It's like Frankenstein's monster, isn't it? We've created this monster and it just turned on us.
Yeah, and this isn't a new phenomenon. The only part I think is new, Vinny, is that it's only been in the last, 200 years that people have actually turn that around from the way it's always been. You look back historically, and the reality is people are I'm a Christian, so I'll put this in Christian terms, but you can put it in other terms. People are sinful. People want power over other people. People, essentially, if you give them unlimited power, as Lord Acton said, they become corrupt. And, one of the ways that they become corrupt, the people at the top, and you can look back, you can find that this was the case with Native American tribes, with Aztec tribes, with, tribes of Pacific Islanders all over the globe. It has been the case that the ruling class always wants to use its power over others to advance its own interests. It makes sense, this is not new. It's been this way from the beginning of time. What's new is that 200 years ago, plus 250 years ago or so, people across this globe said, we don't want to live like that anymore, and let's now make some laws and constitutions and government structures that protect us against this natural human tendency to have the people at the top oppress and harm the people underneath them. And in theory and concept, it's a beautiful idea, and in theory and in concept, to the extent it works, it's a wonderful system. But it's so hard to maintain. I'm trying to remember which of the founding fathers of the U.S. said, what's the best form of government? A democracy if you can keep it.
He said a republic if you can keep it, and I believe it was Ben Franklin.
Thank you. So yes, a republic if you can keep it, and that being the operative phrase, if you can keep it. How do you hang on to it? because over time, the people at the top will calcify their layer. I have a phrase for them on my radio show. I refer to them as the pond scum. They like to think of themselves as the cream that has risen to the top of the milk, and that thick layer of luxurious cream at the top. But they're not. They're really that green, slimy, matte layer of algae that has risen to the top and is choking out all the oxygen and sunlight for everybody else. I live in a part of the world where there's lots and lots of ponds.
Well, that's true.
And I see this green stuff.
I also wanted to iterate again. You mentioned the Lord Acton quote, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The third line in that quote, which is often not heard, is all great men are inherently evil. And this is...
I was not even familiar with that, Vinny. Thank you for filling me in. Can I add one more thing to that quote?
Go for your life.
One of the things that has motivated my work as an activist is that privacy is not an end. Privacy is a means to an end, and the end is freedom and even survival. There is a University of Hawaii professor by the name of R.J. Rummel who wrote a book called Death by Government, and he has devoted an entire academic career to studying how people have been killed by their own governments. And what he found is in the 20th century, more than 6 times more people were killed by their own governments than by all of the century's wars combined. So think about that for a minute. A lot of people killed in war in the 20th century. We had World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War. We had all kinds of conflicts all over the globe in other countries as well. And yet 6 times more people were killed in cold blood by their own governments than in all of those wars. And so he actually took Lord Acton's phrase of power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and he modified it slightly to say power kills and absolute power kills absolutely. So once you understand that, then you understand that this experiment that we've been trying to do for the last 200 plus years of actually having limited government and putting structures in place to limit the power of the people who would climb over us and ultimately kill us, that is not just an issue of, being happier or freer or keeping more of your tax money, that ultimately that is a matter of survival. And so I think it's critical. We have to hang on to these freedoms. We must hang on to them. And, you were saying before the first hour break about, which do you value more, your money or your freedom? I'm going to add another piece to that in absolute confirmation of what you were saying. Your posterity. Meaning you can be as rich as you want to be, but the next generation is going to be completely in trouble if you don't value your liberty. Because even if you get money and you pass it on to your kids, it's not going to last. It's going to be taken away from them, and then their lives will be taken.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's a generational thing.
And Congress is taking away everybody's 401k plans and Social Security and everything like that. It's already happening, people. Dr. Katherine Albrecht will be right back after the break at thevinnyeastwoodshow.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the show that's all about jamming. Jamming a big fat monkey wrench into the apparatus of the mechanics of the New World Order. Now this is, Katherine, I wanted to share something with you, which kind of irritated / disturbed / I don't know, justified what I think. And it was the fact that these people who were speaking at these anti-GCSB, the New Zealand NSA meetings, and at the protest, not one, mentioned the agenda for the world government or the New World Order. And in my opinion, that's really the only thing that actually was absolutely necessary to mention, is to let people know that this is not part of some accidental agenda. Like, do you think it's an accident that all the most powerful people in the world are getting more power and taking and everybody else in the rest of the world who isn't in that massive power structure is getting less power over their own lives, as somebody else is getting all of it over theirs, You think that's an accident? No. It's part of a global agenda. To think that it's an accident makes you a coincidence theorist. You think everything happens by accident, whereas a conspiracy theorist is a person who absolutely believes, and you can't convince them otherwise, that powerful people who have a lot of influence actually use their power to maintain or grow said influence. What do you think about that?
I couldn't agree with you more. There is clearly an agenda on the people who have the power to have more power, and it becomes a vicious circle because the more power they have, the more ability they have to amass more power, and so you wind up with almost an exponential curve of increased inequality within society. This is a very big deal. I think I'm looking at right now a story that just came out from the Associated Press. 80% of U.S. adults face near poverty or unemployment in this country. 4 out of 5 U.S. adults struggling, and you would think this would be from The Onion, right? I mean, it sounds like, how can this be true? But it's from the Associated Press, brand new story, just out today. 4 out of 5 U.S. adults struggle with joblessness, near poverty, or reliance on welfare for at least part of their lives, a sign of deteriorating economic security and an elusive American dream. Survey data exclusive to the Associated Press points to an increasingly globalized U.S. economy, the widening gap between rich and poor, the loss of good-paying jobs, and that's why we're seeing this trend. Now, you get it, that what this really is about is the people at the top saying, we're not content with letting you have even the little bit that you have. We're going to take your jobs. We're going to send them to third world countries where people are working in slave labor type conditions. We're going to find where we can get away with that sort of behavior on the globe. We're not going to have to play fair with New Zealand labor or Australian labor or Canadian labor. We're going to go out there and find labor in some of the poorest, most destitute parts of the planet and take your jobs away until you become destitute. And when you're desperate enough, then you'll come begging for for these menial jobs as well. It's truly horrifying. And it is exactly what you're describing, that the people at the top have found their level. It's like water seeks its own level. These guys will always try every means at their disposal to take away all of your rights and liberties and all your stuff, too, until ultimately they take your life.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So
they'll use every means at their disposal until you try and fight them, and then they dispose of you. They delete you like an unwanted program. It happens to so many activists and whistleblowers. It just breaks my heart every day to hear about this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think what we need to do, because obviously when we talk about this, I think people can get a bit discouraged. But when we look at what happened with Edward Snowden and the NSA, we've got a really wonderful moment of opportunity right now. Because just as I was talking about Iran and how they weren't able to stop people from taking photographs of their crimes and putting them up on Twitter within minutes, the whole world knew. We have a moment in history right now where you and I, Vinny, we can have this open conversation about those very powerful people, and we both get to go to sleep tonight knowing that we will wake up in the morning. We don't have to worry that some sedan is going to come and disappear us, or that we will be rounded up and shot for sedition or speaking out against the authorities. We've got a tremendous opportunity right now with the intersection of the remaining laws that were put in place to protect us against our own governments, which are still intact. Let me point that out, because the minute you start saying, oh, those laws don't work, then you stop trying to defend them. But they work. They're here. We have a First Amendment in the United States. We have the freedom of press and speech. We have the freedom of association. You and I can have this conversation. And on top of that, we have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of listeners right this moment who also have the ability to take what you and I have been talking about and go to your website and tell others, listen to the archived program, look at this woman's website, look at Vinny's website, get out there and become informed. That is something that oppressed people throughout history would have given anything to have the ability to reach as many people as we can reach. And so I think it would be a travesty and a crime for people listening who want freedom in our lifetime to let this window of opportunity go, because you know what's going to happen next. You know it as well as I do. They're going to take away the internet. They're going to take away radio programs. Just like you said, they're taking away your ability to say, bye, New Zealand. They're going to take away our ability to say, well, we don't like what the pond scum are doing. So we've got to do it now. It's critically important that we speak and that we use these amazing tools right now.
Yeah, and they take them away step by step. So unless you're fighting them every step of the way, they're not going to just come right out and say, okay, you're all slaves now. You guys over there in that corner, just move over there to the firing squad, please. And you guys over there who are good, willing slaves, move over to there to the employment line, please. We've got jobs for you in the firing squad.
Yeah.
They're not going to come out and say that, okay? No tyranny suddenly announces to everybody, hey, we're a tyranny, because then everybody goes, oh my God, they're a tyranny. Let's fight back against them. I mean, are you naive, people? Come on. You really do have to fight them every step of the way.
They sweeten it. They put the story on top of it. And the story, because we don't want to believe the worst. We don't want to be pessimists. We want to believe that we live in a good world. And so when they give us these stories, the vast number of people want to cling to them. They're almost like life preservers as we're floating around in the ocean. We want to believe these things, but then you find out that the life preserver that you've grabbed a hold of is really just like a bunch of melting cyanide, and it's not going to save you. So we've got to see past those lies, and I think we have to look for optimism in other places. And this is really where, if I can get back to Start Page, this is really where I think tools that people can put in place to enable you to get off of this new world order ship that we're all on that's going down. So, a great example, the whole startpage.com instead of Google. Add it to your browser. When you go to startpage.com, right underneath the little search box there's a link. There's two links there. One says add it to your browser, and one of them says make it your homepage. So I would challenge everybody listening right now, if Google is your homepage, you need to realize every website that you visit from that homepage, they get a record of. Everything you've ever searched for, they know. In fact, they probably know what half of New Zealand had for dinner last night because your mom or your wife logged on and said, how do I cook pork chops, and got a recipe. It's horrifying how much information they have about us. So in that sense, do simple things, and support companies that are doing the right thing. Every time you search with Google, you're supporting them. You're voting with your mouse clicks for that kind of a world. And that's why we're encouraging people, switch to Start Page. And now let me tell you about email, because I think that's really where the privacy rubber hits the road. If you have a Yahoo account or if you have a Gmail account, every single email that you send or receive is going straight into their database that they keep on you. So let me see if I can explain this. Last month, during the month of June, Yahoo upgraded all of its users to a new email account. And when they upgraded, one of the terms of upgrading, you had to click a box saying, I agree to get your new Yahoo account, which they made everybody do. And it said, you agree to allow them to scan all of your email and perform content analysis on everything that you write. And what that means, they read your email, every single email. If there's a phone number in it, they snag it. They pop it right into your personal dossier of information they keep on you. If there's an address, an appointment, a complaint, a comment, a keyword, a political statement, whatever it is, they snag it right out of your email and they pop it right into the profile that they're keeping on you. And not only are they getting the information that people who have Yahoo and Gmail accounts send and receive, but if I send an email to somebody with a Gmail account or a Yahoo account, then Google and Yahoo are capturing my information and putting it in my profile that they keep on me, even though I've never even agreed to their terms of service. So, when I understood that, I said, wow, search is bad enough because 15, 20 times a day we're telling them what we're thinking about. But email, that gets into some really private stuff. And back in 2006, I was one of a couple dozen privacy advocates that first wrote to Gmail when it first came out. And we said, you guys can't do that. That's really wrong. You need to respect the privacy of people's correspondence. And they ignored us and did it anyway. Now everybody's following suit, most recently Google as of last month, reading all your email. And so we came out with a private alternative. It's taken us nearly 3 years to build it. State-of-the-art privacy technology, the toughest encryption on the planet right now. And that is at startmail.com, startmail.com. We are currently, I think probably for the next couple of days, still signing people up to be beta testers for StartMail. And I just got my account this weekend. I'm so excited. I love it, love it. It makes PGP encryption a snap. It means that your ISP can't read your email. The NSA can't read your email. The government of New Zealand can't read your email. Nobody can read your email. In fact, even we can't read your email if it's on a StartMail account because only you hold the key, and that's your PGP encryption key.
Well, that's nice. And also...
So if you had...
sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to get you a free account, Vinny. I'm going to get you on there because I got to get you into private email because I know you're emailing people all over the world about sensitive topics. You've got guests coming on the show, and I really want you to be locked down tighter than a drum, as they say.
Well, thanks for that, because it was just occurring to me that I'm using a Gmail account and I'm scheduling all my guests, and I've got all their phone numbers, often their addresses, their pictures, their Skype accounts, things like that. Oh my God! All these really extraordinary activists who are exposing copious quantities of scumbaggery are now all...
Can you imagine? Think about just for a minute how it must feel to be Google laughing that the entire world has given them all of their secrets. How it must feel to be them going, ha ha, little do they know, we know everything about everybody. And the thing is, don't feel bad because, every activist I know, every privacy activist I know is on a Gmail or a Yahoo account because we didn't know.
Yeah.
Now we're finding out. It's horrifying. Like, you want to go back and, scoop up all the past information you gave them without even realizing. And because whoever thought that the whole purpose of the email account that they give you was so they could read it. Let me draw an analogy. The reason they give you a free email account, which is worth about $5 a month, is not because they're your best friend, not because they're your mom, not because they're the government or taxpayer or anything else. They give you that account because that gives them an even better window into your entire life. So the analogy would be if you were staying in a hotel. I actually talked about this at a conference, a privacy conference recently, and everybody said, "Oh, StartMail, it's going to be free, right?" And I said, "We can't give you free email. How are we going to pay for that?" Well, Google gives us free email. And I said, "No, they don't. Listen, let me give you an example. We're all in a hotel, right? We were in a Sheraton. And I said, you guys are all paying $200 a night for your hotel room. Well, what if I opened a hotel next door and said all the rooms are free? Come on over. There's just one catch. I've rigged every bedroom with cameras and microphones, and I've bugged the phones, and there's a camera in the shower and one looking up from the toilet. Are you going to go, oh, okay? No. See, that's what Gmail and Yahoo have done. They give you free email, but it's not really free. It's only free because it's like a bugged hotel room. The reason they want to give you the hotel room is because they're scumbags and they want to watch you.
That is the creepiest analogy. That is the creepiest analogy that I have ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And it is so accurate that it's beyond a joke. And you know what this does? This makes me really angry. And I've been criticized recently for being angry when I get on the mic at protests and things like that, saying it puts people off and that I should learn a little psychology and learn how to communicate with people properly. Well, I don't know about you, but being calm, it has its merits and stuff like that. But sometimes the reality is so harsh that you need that emotion, that passion to pierce through people's thinking process and actually appeal to what's really there inside them.
I'm totally with you because I think something's got to wake us up, really. And when we look around at how to respond to these kinds of things, Vinny, people look to you as a radio host. They look to me as a radio host. They look to us as activists, as people at protests. They look to us to know, how should we feel about this? And let me give you an example. If you're in a theater and you smell smoke, and you look around and everybody else kind of seems like they sniffed a little bit and then they just shrugged their shoulders and went back to watching the movie, then you would probably be inclined, it's just human nature, to go, well, I guess there's not really a danger, or everybody would be stampeding out of here, and you'd probably just go back to watching the movie. On the other hand, if you smelled smoke and all of a sudden everybody in the theater started screaming and running for the exit, then you would get up and run for the exit. And the reality, the situation would be exactly the same in both cases, just a little smell of smoke. But we look around and we know how to respond by seeing how other people respond.
See,
And
it's
if
even
other
worse.
people
It's
say,
even
"Oh,
worse
well,"
than that. It's even worse than that at this point, because we can't just smell the smoke. Our nostril hairs are actually being singed by the heat. We'll be right back after the break at the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. Dr. Katherine Albrecht is my guest. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's the final segment here with Dr. Katherine Albrecht. Her websites are kmashow.com. It's kmashow.com, startpage.com, antichips.com, chipmenot.com, and startmail.com. So you're very, very busy. I understand that. And the one thing I find is very interesting is when activists or public advocates go public and they start to get some kind of a following, a whole bunch of the people that follow them make requests of you and say, can you do this? Can you do that? Are you freaking mental? Okay, you're already doing quite a lot. So if you see an activist who's going out there and doing things, don't ask them to do more. What you do is you say, I can help that person because they're doing such and blah, blah, blah. So if I do a little bit of this, that, and the other, which they're recommending that I do in the first frickin' place and take responsibility for my actions instead of putting all the responsibility on other people who can't really handle it all by themselves, then it'll actually make a positive difference. And then I shall become active and I shall become the activist. And then a whole bunch of people will come and ask me for help. And I'll say, actually, you're supposed to help yourself. Here's this and this and this and so on and so forth that you can do. That's what we're trying to get through your heads, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let us fight all your fights for you. That's the very reason why we're in this Shiite Muslim storm in the first place.
I think that's beautifully put, and obviously you've been there. You know what I'm talking about, Vinny. It's true. I totally get that. I've been doing this for 14 years. I run a consumer privacy organization called Caspian. We've got about 20,000 members worldwide. I do periodic newsletters, although less so lately than in the past. But yeah, super busy. And what I tell people over and over and over, there are easy things that you can do, and you need to do them. So we're making it so easy, it's like falling off of a log. Stop using Facebook as your personal email. There's nothing private about it. No matter how many privacy settings, you are providing your information directly to the NSA, providing your information into permanent databases. Stop using Gmail and Yahoo for email because they are recording every single thing you do. Stop using Google as a search engine. Stop installing every single app that comes down the pike onto your smartphone without reading the terms and conditions. Somebody just wrote me, a radio listener just wrote me the other day and said, I can't believe what was in the terms and conditions on an app I was about to install. And I said, really? Like what? And they said, the app terms and conditions actually said, by installing this app, which had nothing to do with recording, it says you give us the ability to remotely turn on the microphone of your phone at any time and listen. And they said, isn't that illegal? And I said, of course it's not illegal. That is a contract. If you click I agree, then you're agreeing to let this random third-party bunch of schmoes turn on your phone at any time they feel like it and listen. And you can't complain if you didn't read the fine print. So we've got to be careful who we do business with. We have to be careful what we click I agree to. We have to be thoughtful. And if there are obvious solutions and there are people working to try to help you, help them. You know, the Vinny Eastwood Show, go to the website. Go to our website, startmail.com. Sign up as a beta tester. Click the little beta box at the bottom and in the little blank where it says, where did you hear about us? The Vinny Eastwood Show and Katherine Albrecht. Thank you. You know, and that's how we grow. That's how we get the information out. And then call 10 friends and ask them to do the same thing. Take the broadcast of this show, which is provided to you absolutely free of charge. That's the part that blows my mind. Here we are, volunteering our time. Use it. Take advantage of it while you still can. While
you know what makes me laugh?
Email it.
You know what makes me laugh, Katherine, is the people who say that we're in it for the money.
I know. Oh my gosh.
It's
Yeah.
like, oh.
Do you have a limo yet? Can I get a ride in your limo, Vinny? I'll give you a ride in mine.
Let me put it like this. The last time I went to the garage, I'm such good friends with the guy at the garage that he covered up all the rust spots on the roof for free for me because he knew that I couldn't afford to do it myself and that I would fail a warrant of fitness if he didn't.
I'm telling you. And here's the thing, Vinny. You and I mean, I heard your clip about, $15,000, your last picture. I get that. I've got a doctorate from Harvard. If I wanted to join the bad guys, man, I could make money hand over fist being some kind of market researcher. I mean, that's what my background was in the 80s. I certainly know how to do that. My gosh. But I couldn't look myself in the mirror. At the end of the day, there's really only one thing that you are going to take to the grave with you, and that's your integrity. You're going to have to answer, whether it's looking in a mirror and answering yourself at the end of the day or whether it's looking into the eyes of God, you are going to have to answer for yourself. And, all those riches are going to pale and fade away. You don't hear anybody on their deathbed going, oh, I wish I'd earned more money. People on their deathbeds go, ooh, I was really a scum. And now I can't take it all back, all my crimes against humanity. So no, it's critical what you're doing. I'm a huge fan. I love coming on this radio show. I would love to come back. I'm going to get you a StartMail account, Vinny. I promise I'm going to get you on there. We will get you a free 1-year account so you can totally email everybody with privacy. And you know what's so cool about StartMail? It's the first time that PGP encryption has ever been made seamless and easy. If you have a StartMail account and I have a StartMail account, automatically the email that we send to one another is completely encrypted. Not only can StartMail itself not read either of our emails, which I love, but nobody in transit can read it. The NSA, even if they got a direct pipeline and could snag it, they couldn't read it because it's completely PGP encrypted. And in the past, that technology's been around a long time, but it's so hard to use that everybody just gave up. Even me, I'm a privacy person. Even I stopped using it because it was so darn hard. With StartMail, it's not only not hard, it's automatic. It's so cool. You're going to love it.
See, StartMail is like a horror story to the NSA. It's like Tales from the Encrypt. And
I know.
I think it was, we were talking there about how you've got the qualifications, and I had the salesman skill, and we could be making a lot of money instead of doing the right thing. And I think the reason primarily why I started doing this is because I was really angry and depressed, and I was calling everybody slaves and scum, and nobody was listening. And it's exactly the same. Nothing's changed except now people are listening.
You know what we have to thank Edward Snowden is I think now people, and maybe you have, I hope you've had this experience where you are too, Vinny, but here in the States, I've had people calling me up who knew me 10 years ago. I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you. You were right. I'm so sorry I ridiculed you, or I didn't believe you, or I kind of chuckled. Every word you said was right, Katherine. Now tell us. Now that we know you've been telling us the truth, what do we do? So I got to say, sometimes we do win. Sometimes things come full circle, and sometimes all of that stuff that you have been so patient in trying to explain to people, it comes full circle, and then they start to get it. The Bible has a phrase in it that I really like. It repeats over and over. Jesus says, "Let he who has an ear hear." And I used to think, what is he talking about? Everybody's got ears. Now I get it. What he's really saying is let the person who can actually open up their mind and hear the truth actually do that. And, when I hear that, I think that must mean that some people don't have an ear and they can't hear. And so our job is not to convince every single person we come in contact with, but it's to say it so that the people with an ear will hear it. And you guys know who you are. You listeners out there, you know when you hear truth. You know when you tune into this broadcast why you listen every day to this show. You know why it is that you're sitting here listening to the sound of my voice right now, because there's truth in it. And the spirit naturally responds to truth. We lap it up. We need it. It's like sunlight to a plant. And you also know when you're getting fed a whole bunch of lies. You can feel that too. And that's really the key. If you've got an ear and you can hear, wonderful. Now go out there and tell somebody else.
Yeah, exactly, and it's the 1 in 7 ping. I believe that it takes about 7 times that you hear the same thing before it starts to really sink in, sort of thing. And I put it like this: basically, you're one of 7 people. Somebody's sitting there and they're drinking fluoridated water or something. You just say something about fluoride. You say, "Do you know that that's not pharmaceutical grade? Do you know that it's actually it eats through concrete and glass and it's in its raw form and it's not a nutrient?" And they're like, "Ah, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist." And I was like, okay. 6 more people will tell you this, and then it'll sink in. Just as long as you play your part. If you see something going on, okay, Janet Napolitano was right. If you see something, say something. But it's not reporting people for saying the truth. It's reporting to people when they're consuming lies.
That is brilliantly put. Absolutely brilliantly put. I don't know if you got this in your email. Somebody sent me this little meme of if you see something, say something. And it shows Janet Napolitano on the left and then Edward Snowden on the right. And it just says, did. I did. I loved it. Totally loved it. Man, that guy is my hero. I'm such a fangirl. I even have his one of his quotes in my signature. His quote says, "I had been looking for a leader. I had been looking for a leader, and then I realized leadership was being the first to act." I was like, man, that guy just, and look at the sacrifice that he made for the rest of us. Unbelievable, extraordinary. So few people are willing to sacrifice anything. Here you and I were talking about sacrificing huge earning potential and sacrificing, professional prestige or whatever it might be. But here's a man who sacrificed all of that and more. I mean, he sacrificed his girlfriend. He'll never again see, the Golden Gate Bridge or the Grand Canyon. He'll never again set foot on American soil. I mean, what a sacrifice. Unbelievable. Yeah. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of yours too, Vinny. Thanks for all you do also.
Well, I also wanted to reiterate to the fans and listeners, if you value the work that Katherine and I and many others do, if you value the work of Edward Snowden, show up and support us. Somebody asked me once, Vinny, how can I get into doing what you do? And I say, well, 99% of it is just being there, just showing up, just doing something, because the whole system is predicated and it only continues if and only if you do nothing to stop it. The power is in your hands. Support me financially if you can. Go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com, donate or subscribe, or go to Katherine Albrecht's site. Thank you very much for your time today, Katherine, and we'll see you again sometime, ladies and gentlemen, at thevinnyeastwoodshow.com.
No matter where you live, globalism affects you. Did you know that the Vinny Eastwood Show has more subscribers than New Zealand Herald TV and is New Zealand's most popular YouTube news channel, where warm-hearted humour and a list of awesome guests talk about crucial issues which the mainstream media ignore? A show where you, the listener, can phone up with questions, comments and suggestions of guests. Vinny is building a hub to connect truthers with raw information they need to become active. He can help you gain further skills such as website building, producing audio and video, and creating revenue streams in your own multimedia environment. Because Vinny supports such a wide range of people in the truth movement, he is not government or corporate backed and relies entirely on your donations. Give now, give generously, or subscribe for $10 a month for access to ad-free video archives. Just visit thevinnyeastwoodshow.com and click donate.